Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Developing the Leader Within. I'm Enrique Acosta Gonzalez, your host, and today I have Norman Wolfe with me. He is the CEO of Quantum Leaders and an author of a book that I just love. It is called The Living Organization, and in it, you're going to find a lot of nuggets of pearls of wisdom that are going to help you out. Norman, welcome to the show, and thank you for being with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Enrico. Thank you for having me. I really enjoy, I'm looking forward to this conversation a lot.
All right, great. Well, we were talking in the background and also throughout the months because we've been working on this for a little bit. And we decided to talk about identifying your soulful purpose. Now, this is something that is near and dear to my heart because as I was sharing with you, I believe the leadership definition has been skewed a little to kind of be basically a stumbling block to leaders. They don't understand that leadership starts when you open your eyes. That's how I view it. It's when you open your eyes that leadership starts. If you cannot start it there, then by the time you get to your job site, by the time you get to engage with people, you've already missed out on all the blessings that it is to be a leader. You're only working on your current job, your current task, and you miss all the cues of what it is to be a full leader. So in the holistic viewpoint, I try to take it from there. But in talking about identifying your soulful purpose, that's one of the things that makes leadership so fun. When you have identified that this is your purpose, and when you can tie yourself to that, I think that leadership will be a whole lot more pleasant for you and for those that you lead. So thank you, first of all, for that wonderful book. And second of all, for this that we're about to engage.
Thank you, Enrique. Yeah, so let's talk about my soulful purpose. How did I end up doing what I'm doing? It actually started probably unconsciously when I started work when I was a young man back in 1969, 1970. I remember walking into my job. I was an engineer with Pratt & Whitney Aircraft, and I had a senior engineer, sort of my supervisor, the lead engineer, and he made a couple of comments over the course of a couple of years. And one comment was, Norman, when you come into work, you leave your personal life behind. Wow. Well, I think it was you leave your personal life at the door. Yep. And I couldn't figure out how to do that. Which part of me do I leave behind? Do I take off my right foot, my left arm? I couldn't figure that out. So, but that stuck in me. And the second thing was, he said, work is not meant to be fun. There was a group of us sitting around talking about how much we just thoroughly enjoyed what we were doing. We were having a lot of fun, making a difference. And he came in and overheard us and he said, gentlemen, work is not meant to be fun. This isn't Disneyland. If you were here to have fun, you'd be paying the company. They had to pay. And you can kind of sense that sense of thought process or mindset that he had. Well, over the course of my years in being an employee and leading organizations and consulting with organizations, I saw that particular pattern kind of dominate the way we think, the way employees feel about going to work, the way leaders unconsciously, and I want to emphasize that word, that unconsciously create that environment, not intentionally. And I began to get curious and quite frankly sad about it. And so I wanted to do something about it. At the same time, as a leader of an organization, I recognized that my number one responsibility was to ensure the organization was creating the outcomes necessary to make it thrive and survive and grow. And I also discovered that we have an abysmal record at accomplishing that. If you look at the statistics, statistically speaking, over the last 4 decades, the failure rate of implementing successfully achieving the objectives of strategic initiatives fail at 70% consistently. So here we have a system that doesn't work to get the outcomes we need, and it also makes people miserable. I decided there was something fundamentally broken. So my soulful purpose was to find a way to help organizations, first and foremost, enhance and support the dignity of the human spirit, to release that creative spark that allows organizations to be successful and grow. That energy that's pent up in people, that's squashed by the existing organization. So that's what I set out to do, and it culminated in the book, The Living Organization, and all the work we do here at Quantum Leaders to bring that framework and model into existence in business to help them create better results and better world for the employees, for the customers, and for the world in general.
I absolutely love that. And, you know, when you spoke about leaving your personal life at the door, it took me back to an era when I was starting out in the Navy.
Ah.
And I remember a chief, which I ended up becoming, right? But I remember at that time I was a young airman, and I remember the chief specifically told me, the Navy did not give you a family. It did not come in your sea bag. And I said, wow. And immediately I had the challenge of choosing between my profession and my family. And how does a young, 18, 19-year-old, decide, who takes priority? But when you said that, it also brought to my mind the fact that these are the things that make work less human.
Absolutely.
These are the things that remove the heart out of the workplace. And so
Absolutely.
no wonder we
Absolutely.
are having issue upon issue upon issue when your company is made of people and they cannot separate the two. And the funny thing is, then I go home and I'm thinking I have to do the same thing when I go home. So how did your day go, honey? Never mind.
Right.
Don't worry. Right?
Yeah, I leave work at work and I come. Who are we? We're schizophrenic society because of that, right? Bob Chapman wrote this wonderful book, and he tells a story about how he changed the culture of his organization. And he tells the story about a gentleman who said, because I am now being treated as a whole human being at work, I find my life at home being much more connected with my family. So just what you said. I mean, it's a wonderful story of how we are whole human beings, whether we like it or not. And when we're forced to bifurcate ourselves, to split ourselves in half, we talk about work-life balance. Well, excuse me, but I only have a life. I don't have a work life and then a life. I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? When you think about it through that lens. And it comes from, if I may get into a little bit of the model, it comes from some fundamental, what I call paradigms, or you can call them mindsets, the way we think about the world. And when we think about the world of organizations as if it's a machine, there's a lot of what I call byproducts to that way of thinking. One of the byproducts is what we're just talking about, right? People become cogs in a machine, they become automatons, they become units of work. We even talk about them as FTEs, full-time employees, right? Units, fungible, exchangeable parts that if one breaks down, we get another one and replace it, right? That's the way we think about an organization. Even in our planning, when we do our budgets, we think in those terms. Well, there's byproduct results of that, which we've been talking about. I think the most significant one, since we're here to talk about leadership, is the role of leader as defined in the machine paradigm is plan, organize, lead, and control. That means I, as the leader, am fundamentally here to program the machine. We call that strategy. And everybody else is here to execute what I, as the leader, or the leadership team, if you want to go that far, decides we should be doing. Again, byproducts, right? So if I am the leader and my job is to plan, organize, lead, and control, what does that lead for you to do? Well, just do, obey, follow, and report. Where's the creativity in that? Where's the innovation in that? Where's the ability to become resilient and agile in that? So we have this mindset that not only for the leader, but that mindset of the leader creates a mindset in the employees. And it's not just at work. Let me tell you, this is a societal problem because it's created from the day we go to school. We follow the rules, and we start off as young children, we follow the rules of our parents. Well, at the age of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, appropriate. By the time we get to being 8, 10, 12, we should be learning to stand on our own, to make decisions, to learn how to manage risk and the risk reward, and to be able to apply our experiences to enhance our ability. But if you look at the way the schools work, up through high school and now even in college, all we're supposed to do is follow the rules, obey, learn the material, pass the test, and graduate. That's it. And then we go to work. And so we've been trained to say, okay, teacher, well, we start mom and dad, what do I do? Teacher, what am I supposed to do to be successful? Boss, what am I supposed to do to be successful? Two problems. One is we've got highly immature, dependent employees, dependent on the leader to make decisions and to tell them what to do. And we've got leaders who are burdened with the responsibility and the complex work of figuring it all out. What a sad state of affairs. So that's what we began to recognize, and the living organization framework says, what if you shifted that? What if you started to see the organization as a person? And I mean literally a person, right? If you go into any organization, you'll notice it has various departments, and every department seems to have a personality, right? You can almost tell the engineering department will have a more analytical personality than the sales department, right? And we kind of we recognize that, but we don't do anything with it. But what if we actually began to look at the organization as a living person, and all the people, all the departments in it were individual people. And of course, the individual departments are made up of actual individual people. And we began to apply the principles we use, say, at home in our relationships to how we manage organizations. And we looked at the role of the leader as nurturing and cultivating the people to help them grow and develop collectively and individually. If our role was more to set the fundamental context, we call it, the reason why we come together as a group and what we're here to accomplish and who we want to make an impact for. Now, people call that mission, vision, values, but that's just a mental thing. We look at it as an embodied state of being. And they're there to build community and to be of service. So we shift from plan, organize, lead, and control to context, development, community, and service. And that's the new role. And it gets to your point that you made at the very beginning, which I love. Leadership is a life thing. When I wake up in the morning, who am I being? That's the way we like to talk about it. Who am I being while I'm doing what I'm doing? Am I being a programmer of a machine? Or am I being a nurturer of a collective and the individual people within it?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, and I came up with that when I started analyzing my soulful purpose. To your credit, when I started saying, well, are you a leader when you show up to work, or so more like, and the question is more like, did your leadership start when you showed up to work, or did you bring leadership into work?
I love that.
Which is it's very two
Totally
different
different.
things.
Yep.
And so I started analyzing it from the perspective of when I first came in contact with the first human today, which would be my wife, right?
Amen.
Which, when I first came in contact with her, was I a leader to her?
Yes.
When I saw my children before
Yeah.
they started their day, was I a leader to them? Did I bring leadership to work, or did I put on leadership when I went through the first door of my job site, right? Which most people, they put on leadership.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so it's not a life thing, and that's why I referred to that. And once leaders start to understand that this is a life thing, they may treat leadership with a little more respect and honor that is due, because it is a position where, and we were jokingly, well, at least I was jokingly saying in the beginning, you know, you will have someone, the same people you say, hey, leave your personal life at the door, and hey, the family didn't come in the sea bag, you're also making them go home and spend their dinner table time talking about you, because that's what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
but I love what you just said. um, and you know, humanizing your organization is a benefit. It is
Absolutely.
not detracting from your ROI,
Oh
from
no.
your bottom line. As a matter
No.
of fact, it may increase that exponentially. And I'm sure that in your line of work and what you've done and what you do with organizations, you can attest to that.
Absolutely.
Those that give you the option, the option and ability to go in and humanize them, they have seen that. So can you give me a little maybe example of something that you've seen and said, man, that's what I was talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And to help you understand the example, let me give you a little bit background of the model we use. If an organization is a living person, then the question we want to ask, to your point, is how does a person create the outcomes they create? Right? So if I know how I create outcomes as a person, and an organization's a person, a living being, how do living beings create outcomes? Well, certainly there's the activity we do, right? So if I'm going to type a computer code, if I'm going to run a production line, if I'm going to develop certain metrics to know how I'm doing and all of those things, then I know the activity. But human beings become a look, and that's, if all you had was a machine, that's all you would care about. And in fact, that's all we do care about, right? How do we streamline the operations, and how do we eliminate waste, and what are the right metrics that's going to incentivize people? That's our dominant way of thinking, the machine way of thinking. Human beings are kind of unique in that they also have this thing called relationships. And I won't go into long detail, I'll just give you a little taste of it. Imagine you have a group of people who are in conflict with each other, trying to get something done. That would be, from an energy point of view, that would be like energy out of phase, to use an engineering term, or simply we're spending so much time in the relationship domain that we're not getting any activity done. Versus an organization where people are harmonious with each other, where they support each other, where they feel supported by everybody else, where they can trust and have positive, harmonious relationships. And I'm not just talking about we like each other and we go to the movies together. There's just a sense of being together that I feel safe and supported. Right? Think about the outcome those people will produce. So relationships carry a huge weight in it. But there's this other element we call context, which is, simply put, and it really goes into your theme, developing the leader within. Who am I being while I'm doing what I'm doing? What are my core belief systems? What do I think is possible and is not possible? How do I respond to life's events unconsciously, right? What am I, something happens and I respond to it, right? That's come out of my years of experience. Well, the same thing happens with organizations. They have this sort of internal, what we call psychic DNA patterns, that something happens, they respond without thinking, which is good because it makes us efficient. It's not good when it doesn't fit the current environment I'm in. Same thing with human beings, right? We live life, we learn to respond to life in certain ways that fits us well. As long as it's producing the outcomes, we keep doing it. When it doesn't, we get into conflict with life experiences, and that stimulates us to change. So we wrap that all up into a simple formula that says the impact we create is equal to the activity we do times the relationships squared, because that carries a lot of impact on our activity, to the power of context, because the context is sort of a defining energy field. That's a little background. Let me show you how I apply it. So when we go in and do a SWOT analysis, for example, most SWOT analysis focus dominantly on the activity we do. What are our strengths and weaknesses, and how do we do what we do, and where can we improve, and what are the opportunities in front of us, and so forth. But they don't consciously or explicitly pull out the relationship and activity in the context fields. I was working with one client, and they were having terrible problem meeting their milestones on getting new products developed. And so they kept promising things to customers, and they miss, promise, miss, promise, miss. So that was the activity problem. Well, when I dove down a little bit more, it became obvious that there was conflict amongst the executive team. They were bickering, and the CEO was getting frustrated because she couldn't get a team aligned, and no matter what she was doing, it wasn't quite working right. That was part of why she brought me in. So when I did the deeper dive into the context field, I discovered that half of the company, led by mostly the CEO, the company was centered around providing sales. It was a sales company for internet advertising. And it had developed this wonderful technology platform that gave them a competitive advantage to make sure they were getting the biggest bang for the advertising dollars that the customers, they can figure out the algorithms and all of that. The other half of the company, led by the IT guy, felt that the company wasn't a sales company that used a technology platform. It was a technology platform, and they should be selling the platform and marketing that. So he was prioritizing the enhancement of the platform, where not and deprioritizing the needs of the sales. When I presented those three things, we laid it out. Here are the issues around activity that you're struggling with. Here are the issues around relationship, and here are the context issues. The whole executive team went, "Oh, that's why we can't solve it, because we've got this fundamental split." Of course, being that the CEO was on the side of the sales, the IT manager had to either get on board or leave. He ended up choosing to leave. He really believed, and he went to another company to develop their platform, which is fine for him. And then the company got back on track and everything went well. Without identifying that underlying context split, whatever they did at the activity level to improve achieving milestones, which they did, they implemented Agile, spent tens of thousands of dollars implementing new systems, right? Brought in people to facilitate the relationship conflicts. Nothing changed because fundamentally nobody was addressing the context. So there's an example of how important this is to be able to explicitly identify all three fields. We also do it in simpler terms. That was the company-wide, but you can do it for any challenge. We use what we call an ARC force field analysis. Here's the challenge. What are the activity, relationship, and context issues associated with it? It's that combination, and it ties right back to what you talk about, the leader within. Who am I being? What's my context? Am I waking up in the morning as a leader with a mindset of leader to develop and nurture the people I'm in? Am I waking up in the morning with a mindset that I put on my leadership role and I program the machine when I get to work, but at home I'm a different person? What's my context? And that changes everything.
Absolutely. I loved all that you just said. And it's funny because you mentioned a company, and I'm like, man, I know that company. it's a it's
Yeah,
it's a challenge. It's a challenge that everyone
every,
that doesn't understand context, right?
yep.
Context and activity, all that stuff. If you don't understand that, you will have what I consider a double-headed dragon, right?
Yes.
A
Oh,
double-headed
beautiful. Yes.
double-headed dragons. They think they're together in purpose,
Yes.
but in thought they are so separate. And because
Absolutely.
it's one body but it's two heads. And it's a challenge that many companies face.
Oh, absolutely.
uh and they see right over it because they think they're no, we have the same purpose, but the train of thought and the mindset are so different that that it actually splits the company. And
And it's so easy to fool each other that we're on the same page. You know? In this example, the IT, the head of IT would be talking to the VP of sales. And if you listen to that conversation, they'd both be saying, oh yeah, the VP of sales says, yeah, the platform is important. I agree with you. And we gotta use it to get the products out for the customer. And the VP of IT would be saying, oh yeah, sales is important and we want to use sales so we can develop the platform. But they're really saying two different things, even though they're on the surface agreeing with each other. Because their underlying sense of being, the sense of who I am, my identity, and what's important to me to be safe and successful in life are way different, even though on the surface it looks the same. So if you don't get down and understand that, you're right. You got a two-headed dragon. It's a nightmare.
yeah, I've seen that nightmare once or twice. So, and you know what? It's not foreign to the military.
Oh,
Although in the military there are very, there's the UCMJ. There's this one thing that kind of levels everybody out. There's orders and you obey them. You could ask about something, but there's still an order. So it's different in that aspect, but I have seen commands that have a two-headed dragon
well,
syndrome underlying. It's underneath, and
absolutely.
a savvy senior enlisted leader can see that right from the beginning and address it. And that's the benefit of having that third spoke to the wheel of
Well,
the chain of command, because if not, some things can go astray. But I'm loving this conversation, and I would love to continue to dive into this thing. What brought you to addressing the soulful purpose? Because in business, and we kind of mentioned it, right? Money talks, right? Money talks. Heart and soul, it's kind of one of those dance around. I hope you get it. I hope that. I hope you live a good life, but not here. So how did you implement some stuff like this in companies where the thought is money talks?
well, as I said in our previous conversations, I totally agree with the notion money talks. Too many consultants in others in the field, academics and so forth, talk about life as if profit and money are bad things. They're greedy. It makes people bad. It's the cause of why we're doing all this thing. And they don't recognize that we have to make money. Money is just a proxy metric. It's a proxy indication of how well we're serving the people we had to serve. Because in business, it's structured as I give you something of value and you give me something in exchange of equal value. Instead of giving you, 3 goats for 4 cows, I give you an engagement of my services for X number of dollars, right? But it's still an exchange of value for value. Very fundamental. We do it in our personal lives. I go to work, I expect something in return for that, right? You do, everybody does. Leaders do, employees do, because we know we have to make a profit in our personal life. Otherwise we go, into debt and we go into bankruptcy and we get on the, so nobody wants that. So this notion of profit is bad is a misnomer, and it actually doesn't serve us. When I set out to create the model, uh, forefront in my mind and in my thinking was, how do we create the results we want to create? How do we create the impact we want to make? The impact we want to make is measured. We want to measure what we do is measured in dollars. You know, very simply, without making finance real complicated, I give you something of value, you give me something in return, equal value, right? That's called my revenue stream. I consume energy in producing that thing of value. That's my expenses. The consumption of energy is fundamentally my expenses. If my value I give, if I've added value to my expenses, I have a differential. That's called profit, right? Again, personal life, same thing. I make an income. I spend my money to live my life, to develop myself, to utilize that money for my own enhancement, my own experiences. If I have something left over, that's my profit. I can invest that into the growth of my family. I can buy a house. I can buy a car. Without that profit, there's no investment in the future. Same thing for a company. Without that profit, there's no investment in the future. Profit is good. So the question I ask is, how do we create the outcomes we create at the least use of energy possible? And that's really where I came up with activity, relationship, and context. Recognizing these three fields is what contributes to the outcomes I create and the impact I make. And so I want to optimize all three fields. And going back to my example, I'm wasting a lot of time and money if I'm spinning around on solving a problem without understanding the underlying context that's causing it. If I understand the underlying context, I can solve my problems much faster and save a lot of money. Right? So it's really oriented, the whole model was oriented to the very thing people complain about is, how do we make more money? How do we do more with less? And that's what we all want to do in our personal lives and in business.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not money that's the issue. It's the love of money, right? When you focus you focus on that one piece and negate everybody else, then you got some trouble. But
Now,
it's not money. That's
that's
not the
right.
case. Everybody's in business. That is the currency that is shifted. If it was cows, we'd be talking about cows, right? So, then the cows would be evil. That's not the case. So I love, and I'm going to recap this. So folks that are listening, leaders that are listening, your leadership starts when you open your eyes. Remember that. If you are downing on leadership, when you walk in the door of your business or your company or an organization, you are diminishing the authority and the power of leadership to a timestamp. And when you run leadership in timestamp mode, then what you do is you're going to detract from your people, because you're going to rely on them. You're not relying on your effort. You're relying on their obedience. So that's number one. Number two, humanize your organization. I love the living organization model. Everything that you've packed into that, Norman. I'm going to deep dive into that myself. But humanize your organization. Create an environment that your people feel safe and supported. That shows that you are opening your eyes to leadership, not donning it on. And be careful for root driven, and you have mentioned it, but I gave it another name: root driven reactions. When we react to something deep down inside you don't recognize, then you need to start looking at what those root driven reactions are causing for your organization. And as a leader, I believe that those things that we just mentioned will help you out a whole lot. Norman, I've been loving this. I've been loving listening to you. I can't wait to travel. Restrictions are kind of let go, so I can hit you up in California.
I love them.
Yeah. And but if someone wanted to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
Two ways. One is my LinkedIn profile. So just check Norman Wolfe and Quantum Leaders. Second, and probably the best way, is my website, www.quantumleaders.com. And for your guests, I have a free offer of the first 3 chapters of my book. They can get that by going to quantumleaders.com/podcast and sign up and get the first 3 chapters of the book to get a sense of what we're talking about.
I love it. I love it. You know, every time somebody comes and offers to listen to something and it's this good, folks, start going in there. Get into that website. I'm going to put all your information, Norman, on the bottom of the video, and so people can reach out to you. But this was a great conversation. You know, one that I could just engage, you know, for a while. But
Well, we'll just have to do it again.
All right, let's work on that, folks. As you know, that we love ending our show. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Norman, for being with us as well. And to everybody out there, success to you.